You see adversity, and you lose some of your friends, and you get back up in 30 minutes. You walk on down the road, and you live with that all your life. First, I believe it was the 187, and the Marines were in the city already, but the 101st went in there, and then into the city itself. My name is Jesse Taylor, and I'm from a small town in southeast Georgia called Waycross. I grew up there. I went to school there. I graduated high school in 1963. And like a lot of other young guys in South Georgia, there was, college wasn't in the plan for me, so I couldn't get a job paying anything. So my first cousin, I decided we'd volunteer to go into the military. I had a friend of mine who was in the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg, and he come home one weekend, and I saw him in his uniform. He had on those jump boots and everything, and I had to go airborne myself. That's what I wanted to be. So the buddy plan with the Army is that you only get to go to basic training together. After that, you're separate. We didn't know that, and they didn't tell us that. But anyhow, I went through basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Then I went to advanced infantry training at Fort Gordon. And after that, I went to Fort Benning for jump school. And I was in like the middle of a cycle, so I had to spend a week doing KP for the OCS candidates. That I won't ever forget. And finally, jump school was over with. I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then that was in 1964. And in 1965, they had a little up deal there in the Dominican Republic down in the Caribbean, and the 82nd's responsibility is Central and South America. So we went down there when they had that overthrow of their government there, and supposedly we were going to jump into the area, but we wound up landing and secured an airport there. And what we were told was going to be like a 90-day mission. We were there for 18 months. So I got back in 1966 to Fort Bragg. And at that time, Vietnam was getting hot and heavy. And there was a brigade, the 173rd Airborne, that got hurt real bad. So they were seeking volunteers to form a company out of troopers from the 82nd. So me and several other of my friends, NCOs, I was a little E5 at the time, we volunteered to go to the 173rd. Once I transferred, that was at Fort Bragg where they were forming this company. They sent me to Panama to jungle school down there to get acclimated to the weather, and I'd never been to Vietnam before, so being an NCO, they wanted me, just a little more advanced training. So I went down there. I come back. I think it was about 5-6 week course. I can't remember, but anyhow, it was good. I come back, and I'd been there just a short time. I got hit on a levee went to the 101st in Vietnam. So I went home for 30 days, and my dad took me to MacDill Airport, which is in Tampa, Florida. And I got a hop from there to out to the West Coast. Left the Oakland Army Terminal on July the 7th, 1967. And I arrived in country. I'll never forget the first blast. I grew up in the South, and when I was a kid, I picked tobacco and stuff like that, and I was used to hot, humid weather, but nothing like that. And it just slapped you in the face. And when you arrive at the 101st, they have a little training area for about 1 week. You get a little more advanced tactics and training, and then they send you out to your your company that you're going to be working with for your tour, which was 1 year. I arrived with the 1st Battalion of the 327 Airborne, and at the time, in 1967, there was only 1 brigade of the 101st. The division was still at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They didn't arrive until the latter part of 67, just before the Tet Offensive. We were at a place called, at that time, we were at a place called Camp Eagle, which is just south of the city of what they call the Imperial City of Way, which was the largest battle during the Vietnam War. And we were serving as a blocking force for the 1 Battalion 101st, and of course the Marines were there, and they took a blunt of that, in the city itself. And our job was to get the NVA as they were fleeing the city, and it was rough. But when I first got to the 101st, we walked. They'd pick us up in a chopper, and they would take us out on what I call search and destroy missions, and we'd walk and we'd walk and we'd walk, and we'd stay out there for 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time. You'd have a full beard, and you'd be wearing the same old clothes every day for weeks on end, and you'd be humping a rucksack with probably total weight of probably somewhere approximately a little over 100 pounds. You'd have like 5 canteens of water, you'd have like 6 bandoliers of ammo, you'd have fragmentation grenades, all your C rations, everything you carried on your person. And that'd whip a grown man humping that thing. We were operating up in the mountains and the Central Highlands. And I said, man, this is going to be a piece of cake. All I got to do is just get on a helicopter and walk around, and if I can just survive that, I'll be all right. And then one day you get hit, and you realize it's for real, and you see people get hurt, and you see people get killed right in front of you, and you say, my God, it makes you got a different outlook on life from that day forward. You don't care about anything but this man beside you and the man in front and in back of you, because you've got his back and he's got your back. It changes you. You get hard. You see adversity, and you lose some of your friends, and you get back up in 30 minutes and you walk on down the road, and you live with that all your life. It never goes away. Sitting here talking, bringing back old memories is hard. While I was there, I received a Silver Star for action battle, and a couple of Bronze Stars with the V for actions, and a couple of Army Commendation Medals with V's on them. I was a master jumper with the 101st. Well, all the jumping was done with the 82nd, but they still kept us on jump status. After the division got there in '68, we become air mobile because we were getting all these young guys right out of AIT without the training that I had. They were sending them straight to Vietnam. When I got there, it was a good cadre of officers and NCOs. All the stuff that you see and hear on the news. Vietnam wasn't like that. I'm sure later on that there was some problems and issues, but when I was there, at my time, it was strictly professional. You had, like I say, you had troopers that just followed your back, and today, after all these years, I can still, there's triggers like smell, and you can ride up here in the mountains, this time of year, and you can see things up there, and it really, it never leaves, never.
What was coming home like?
Coming home was, I think it was almost as hard coming home as it was going, because you couldn't tell anybody. Your friends say, Jesse, where you been? And of course I was still in the military at the time, so it wasn't quite as hard on me as it was on some of the draftees. When they'd go for 2 years and they were right back on the streets, they were out in a hostile environment. And I know when we landed in the Oakland terminal there, a lot of guys were taking their uniforms off because of all the protests and everything was going on. And I said, my God, here we've been, fighting for our country, and we've seen, men come and go and die and get all, just get really hurt, and then come back and see this. I never thought I'd see anything like that in my lifetime, because I grew up, my dad was in World War II, and those guys come back and marched down the city streets in New York and everything, and we never got anything like that. And I think that's why today we try Vietnam veterans and Korean veterans. They really didn't get any rescue at all either. But especially it was so vocal during Vietnam, the protests and the marches and everything. I believe today that's why veterans like myself, we try to open up to all the young guys and gals that's coming back after engagements in Afghanistan and Iraq, etc. We try to show them that how much they are appreciated. And now today, you can see I wear a ball cap. For up until about 3 years ago, I didn't do that. I just didn't want any part of it. I didn't want to have anything to do with the VA. And then several years ago, a friend of mine told me about a group that was meeting up in Greenville. And I went there, and it was for combat veterans that had issues with PTSD, etc. And I didn't even know what I had. I knew something wasn't right, but I was angry all the time. I abused my family and my friends, and I become a workaholic. I worked, from 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night, every day. And it seemed like as long as I was working, I was fine. And then when I retired, I started getting back those old feelings again. And we discovered the clinic, the Anderson Clinic, had a group of veterans that was meeting. And I found out about that through another friend. And I went there. And I found that I wasn't the only one that had issues. That there was other people just like me, and I found a place where I could go, and I felt comfortable for one time in my life. I fit in. I wasn't on the outside anymore. And
that group was what?
It was just Anderson, the PTSD group, and at the clinic, the Veterans Administration. And after going there for a number of years, probably 4 or 5 years. They said we can't do this any longer, and we had a lady by the name of Ellen Russell, she was fantastic. She everybody that's associated and employee of the Veterans Affairs or Administration, they aren't bad people. There's a lot of good people there. I've met some doctors and nurses that bend over backwards to try to help you. But I've also met some that wouldn't give you the time of day, And it seems like the hierarchy, the administration part is where the problem is with the Veterans Administration. So they decided to shut it down. Well, about 3 months later, I got in contact with Miss Russell, and she gave me a list of all the members that used to go in there. And so I got that, and I started calling guys. And I said, look, if we could get something going, would you be interested? And they said, God, yeah, Jesse, please. So we formed a group called Vets Helping Vets. It started out just like the old, for PTSD with combat soldiers. And we started, I couldn't find a place for us to meet. That was awful hard. A lot of people had compassion and all, but they said they just couldn't accept the liability of it. So I finally found a place at the Anderson County Library, and so we got started on October the 14th of 2014, and we haven't looked back. We started out with 14 members, and today we have about, I would say, approximately 30 guys at our meetings every Wednesday, and now we've opened it up to veterans, period. Men, women, National Guard, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, we have them all. And it's just a good place, and there's a lot of people like Phil and Stan there. Guys, we're predominantly, I'd say about 90% Vietnam veterans. I've even got one World War II guy there, yeah. And boy, has he got some stories. But it's a place that a vet can go, and he can speak his mind, and he knows that what he says stays there, that nobody is going to be running around, saying Jesse did this or Stan did this. There's trust, and when you have trust, that's the deal. And guys can speak their mind. If they can go there, if they don't want to say anything, they don't have to say anything. I've got some guys that's been there for 2 years, never said a word. One day they open up, and you can't keep them shut, So it's the best thing that I've ever did for me. It's the best thing. I've had guys to call me up, and just, it's just a blessing,
What will this Veterans Day mean to you, Jesse?
Well, first of all, I would like to say welcome home to all the vets out there. But to me personally, it brings back old feelings that never leave. Makes me proud I'm an American.